Disclaimer: the following story is a work of fiction inspired by real locations and urban legends. It is intended purely for entertainment and storytelling purposes. The events, names, and situations portrayed in this narrative are fictional and should not be taken as fact. Viewer discretion is advised due to eerie themes, disturbing scenes, and paranormal elements. Please note that we do not encourage trespassing or investigating haunted locations without proper authorization and safety precautions. All rights reserved. Perched on the hills of Hollywood, nestled quietly behind ancient iron gates and a curtain of ivy-covered walls, stands a house so infamous it has become part of Los Angeles folklore, the Mulholland House. Though not listed on any official tourist map, its name is whispered by locals, feared by trespassers, and avoided by real estate agents. It is often referred to as Hollywood's most haunted house, a title not earned by superstition alone, but by tragedy, mystery, and a long, bloody history. The house was built in the late 1920s during Hollywood's golden age, when silent films were fading and the stars of the silver screen were beginning to shine. Its first owner was Reginald Harrow, a British film producer with a taste for the occult and a reputation for extravagance. Legends say Harrow designed the house using ancient architectural principles meant to attract energy. Locals believed he performed rituals in the basement and that the house was never meant to be just a home. It was a conduit, a gateway, or worse, a trap for something that should never be disturbed. Strange events began just a year after the house was completed. Guests would fall ill after visiting, servants reported ghostly figures at night, and one housemaid was found dead in the library, hanging from the chandelier, her eyes wide open in terror. Authorities ruled it a suicide, but whispers suggested otherwise. Over the decades, the house passed from one celebrity owner to another. A silent film actress disappeared inside and was never seen again. A rock band in the 1970s rented the mansion for a year and left mid-lease, refusing to speak about their experience. The only thing they ever said in an interview was, "It watches you when you sleep." Despite the legends, the house still stands tall, though now it lies abandoned. Its windows are boarded, its once beautiful gardens overrun with weeds, and the driveway is cracked and covered in dead leaves. Most believe it's empty. Some believe it never truly is. Security cameras around the neighborhood have caught movement inside the house even when no one was supposed to be there. Shadows flitting past windows, lights flickering, and once, a blurry figure staring straight into the lens. Hollywood tour guides usually skip the Mulholland House, not because they don't believe in its story, but because they do. The stories told among neighbors and night security guards are all similar: crying in the night, laughter echoing through empty rooms, and once, a woman in white seen standing on the roof during a thunderstorm. She jumps and disappears before hitting the ground. Perhaps the most terrifying rumor is that anyone who stays a night in the house starts to change. There was a director in the 1990s who insisted on filming inside the property for authenticity. His movie was never completed. He was institutionalized 6 months later, ranting about a mirror that showed a different reality. When asked where he saw the mirror, he would only scream, "In the basement. It knows I saw it." Now, in the present day, the house sits dormant. City Council refuses to demolish it due to historical preservation laws. But no one buys it either. Realtors say potential buyers always change their minds after touring the house. Some run out in panic, others remain silent for weeks, as if haunted by something they cannot explain. Despite everything, one man has decided to uncover the truth. An ambitious young filmmaker named Alex Rourke, determined to create a documentary unlike any other, believes the house holds the key to one of Hollywood's darkest secrets. What he doesn't know is that by stepping inside, he is not just making a film, he is walking straight into a nightmare crafted over 100 years, where the line between reality and the supernatural dissolves into shadows. And once the house opens its doors to you, it never truly lets you go. Alex Rourke wasn't your typical filmmaker. At just 29, he had already made a name for himself in the indie circuit with 2 award-winning documentaries, both exploring the strange and unexplained. One had covered secret cults in the Appalachian Mountains, and the other had dived into real-life exorcisms. Critics called him a modern-day seeker of truth, while skeptics accused him of blurring fact and fiction. But Alex didn't care about their opinions. He was obsessed with one thing: capturing the impossible on camera. He first heard of the Mulholland House through a late-night podcast episode titled Hollywood's Haunted Hell House. The host spoke of vanished celebrities, cursed basements, and secret rituals tied to the early days of cinema. Unlike the dozens of other haunted places Alex had researched, this one felt different, raw, untouched, and dangerously real. He stayed up until dawn digging through Reddit threads, obscure paranormal forums, and forgotten web archives. Every story he read only fueled his hunger. Within days, Alex was deep into planning his next project, Through the Gates, the truth about Hollywood's haunted mansion. This wasn't going to be a typical ghost hunting documentary with shaky night vision and overacted reactions. No, Alex wanted to peel back the layers of myth and reveal whatever lay beneath on film. He envisioned a psychological masterpiece that blurred horror and truth. One that would launch him from indie fame to international acclaim. But as his obsession deepened, so did the warnings. Paranormal researchers he contacted refused to speak on record. One old investigator hung up on him the moment he mentioned the Mulholland House. A retired LAPD officer responded to his email with just 3 words: "Let it rot." Even an old Hollywood historian, known for her encyclopedic knowledge of the city's haunted locations, refused to meet him. She told him through a voice note, "Some stories are buried for a reason. That place, it's not just haunted, it's infected." Still, Alex didn't back down. The more resistance he faced, the more determined he became. He leased a studio apartment a few blocks from the mansion to stay close to the energy. He hired a small team: his college friend and cinematographer Dean, a tech-savvy sound girl named Lacey, and a research assistant, Jordan, who specialized in Hollywood archives. Together, they started collecting blueprints, property records, and security footage leaked from local neighborhood watch groups. One of the blueprints they uncovered was dated 1929 and revealed an extra room in the basement that had never been mentioned publicly. No photos, no records, no explanation. Strangely, the room was labeled in strange symbols rather than English. Jordan tried running them through translation software, but the results were inconclusive, some ancient form of Latin mixed with alchemical symbols. That's when Alex decided they needed to get inside. It wasn't easy. The house was under city surveillance due to previous trespassing incidents. But with the help of a private location scout, Alex secured a 72-hour filming permit under the pretense of an architectural documentary. They were given access to the main floor and the second level, but the basement remained locked. When Alex questioned it, the city official simply said, "No one's been down there since '83. We don't touch it. You shouldn't either." That night, Alex stood in front of the house for the first time, bathed in the orange glow of a street lamp. Its windows were black, its structure cold and heavy like a sleeping beast. He could feel something watching him from the other side of the iron gate. Not a person. Not even a ghost. Something deeper. Something ancient. Still, he wasn't afraid, not yet. In his mind, he repeated the same sentence over and over like a mantra: "This is the story that will make me famous." But fame comes with a price. And some stories are not meant to be told. Once inside the Mulholland House, something shifted for Alex and his crew. It wasn't just the smell, old wood, mildew, something metallic, but the feeling of being watched. Every creak in the floorboards, every sigh of wind through the broken shutters, felt loaded with meaning. Alex wasn't scared, he was hooked. His obsession grew darker, more urgent, and now that he had physical access, he couldn't stop digging. Jordan, the research assistant, set up a temporary command center in the dining room with all their files and records. He had spent days combing through city archives, old newspapers, and police blotters. What he discovered painted a horrifying picture of the house's past, one far bloodier and more twisted than Alex had imagined. The Mulholland House wasn't just a haunted location, it was a magnet for death. The earliest documented tragedy dated back to 1932. A maid named Evelyn Cross was found dead in the bathtub, her wrists slit open, her body surrounded by dozens of burned-out candles. The newspapers reported it as a suicide, but the autopsy records Jordan obtained hinted at something darker. Evelyn had ingested powdered bone dust and rare herbs before her death, ingredients associated with occult ceremonies. The coroner's notes had one chilling line: eyes wide, mouth smiling. Not a peaceful death. More deaths followed: silent film stars, studio executives, even a child. One by one, their names filled the makeshift evidence wall. All had lived in or visited the house before meeting violent, unexplained ends. Some were ruled accidents, others simply vanished. It was as if the house took pieces of every soul who entered it. The crew also uncovered a 1940s gossip column clipping featuring Clara Monroe, a once famous actress who vanished after a party at the house. In a black and white photo, she stood by the staircase, beaming, champagne in hand. That same staircase now stood broken and splintered behind them. According to reports, Clara walked into the library around midnight and was never seen again. Her shoes were found neatly placed at the base of the fireplace 2 days later. Her body was never recovered. Then came the strangest find of all: a hidden journal buried inside a false wall in the master bedroom closet. The crew discovered it while searching for old photographs, but when Dean tapped on the paneling, it gave way to reveal a hollow space. Inside was a box wrapped in red velvet. The journal inside was bound in cracked leather and smelled of mold and old ink. The pages were filled with erratic handwriting, sometimes neat, sometimes jagged and manic. The writer? Reginald Harrow himself, the original owner. His entries started with reflections on filmmaking and Hollywood society, but quickly spiraled into madness. He wrote of voices that live in the walls, of a mirror that doesn't show your reflection, and, most disturbingly, of a ritual to preserve fame and youth. The ritual required a gift of soul and blood under the red moon. The last entry was dated May 15, 1931, the night before Evelyn Cross was found dead. And that wasn't all. In the journal's final pages, Harrow spoke of a secret room, one beneath the basement, accessible only by completing the ritual. A place he called the Chamber of Echoes. Jordan cross-referenced the date with lunar records and discovered that May 15, 1931, had in fact been a blood moon. That same lunar event was scheduled to occur again, next week. Alex could barely contain his excitement. This was no longer a ghost story. It was a real, provable pattern, an ancient ritual playing out over generations. And now he had the chance to catch it all on film. But the rest of the team wasn't so convinced. Dean grew nervous. "If this is all real," he said one night, pacing the hallway, "then what happens if we go too far? What if we open something that can't be closed?" Lacey had already started sleeping with the lights on. She claimed she heard whispers in the dark and once saw a figure staring at her from the bathroom mirror. The crew's energy shifted from curiosity to dread. The deeper they dug, the colder the air became, and the more the house seemed to respond, floorboards creaking at night, doors swinging open without wind, static in their recordings that formed faint, whispering words. But Alex refused to stop. He taped the blueprint of the basement to the wall and circled the mysterious room. "This is where it ends," he said, eyes burning with obsession. "We find the chamber. We film everything. We expose the truth." He didn't know that the house had already chosen him. The first true encounter with the entity inside the Mulholland house didn't come with screams or a sudden jump scare. It arrived in silence, subtle and slow, like a shadow creeping beneath a door. It happened on their second night of filming, when the team decided to leave their equipment running overnight in different parts of the house. They had set up thermal cameras, motion detectors, and audio recorders in the main hallway, living room, upstairs bedrooms, and the basement stairs, every corner covered, hoping to catch even the faintest sign of paranormal activity. At 3:12 a.m., all 4 cameras experienced a synchronized static spike, followed by a 23-second blackout. When the footage resumed, the thermal camera in the upstairs hallway captured something chilling: a figure, ice-cold and still, standing at the end of the hall. The outline resembled that of a woman in an old-fashioned dress, her arms hanging by her sides. Her head was slightly tilted, as if listening. Then, without warning, the camera lens cracked from the inside. Lacey, who reviewed the footage the next morning, screamed. Her hand flew to her mouth as she watched the ghostly figure slowly turn its head toward the lens just before the image went black. Alex, on the other hand, was thrilled. "This is it," he whispered. "This is the moment the story becomes real." But that wasn't all. The audio recorders had captured whispering, indecipherable at first, but when Jordan isolated the sound and cleaned up the background noise, the words became clearer. "It's not yours to tell." The same phrase, repeated by multiple voices in layers, overlapping and whispering in perfect rhythm. It wasn't just eerie, it was a warning. That same night, Dean, who had been sleeping in one of the upstairs guest rooms, woke up with the feeling of being strangled. Not metaphorically, literally. He gasped for air, clawing at his neck, eyes wide in panic, but no one was there. He ran into the hallway, coughing and drenched in sweat. Around his neck, red marks, 5 long finger-shaped bruises, were plainly visible. He didn't sleep in the house again after that. He moved to a motel down the road and returned only during daylight hours. Lacey, meanwhile, began hearing a woman crying. The first time was in the living room around 4 a.m., a soft sobbing, like someone mourning a great loss. When she followed the sound, it always led her to the grand piano, covered in dust and silent for decades. The crying would stop the moment she touched the piano bench. Once, in a moment of unease, she lifted the piano lid, only to find a woman's pearl earring sitting inside, still shining as if it had just been placed there. The crew tried to rationalize everything. Maybe it was sleep deprivation. Maybe the static and glitches were just old wiring. But deep down, they all knew something was watching them. The Mulholland house wasn't empty, it was alive, feeding off their presence. One of the most disturbing moments occurred on the 3rd night. Jordan decided to descend into the basement alone to set up an extra audio recorder. As he reached the bottom step, he heard a faint knock, then another. It wasn't from behind him, but beneath him. Like someone or something was tapping from underneath the concrete. He froze. The air grew icy cold, and the hairs on his arms stood up. When he turned to go back upstairs, he found the basement door locked from the other side. It took Dean 10 minutes to break it open. Jordan didn't speak for hours after that. The final sign was perhaps the most unsettling. Alex awoke one night to find that someone had written in the condensation on his window. It was just one word, "Stay." But what chilled him more was that he had never opened the window. There was no fog, no steam. It had simply appeared, like breath against glass that wasn't even cold. Despite everything, Alex was ecstatic. In his mind, they had proof, tangible, terrifying proof. He began editing clips immediately, preparing teaser trailers and uploading encrypted backups of the footage, certain he was about to change the world of documentary filmmaking forever. But the others were beginning to crumble. Dean wanted out. Lacey begged him to shut it down. Jordan, pale and jumpy, insisted something was awakening inside the house. But Alex couldn't stop. He wouldn't stop. He had seen the spirit. He had heard her cry. And now, more than anything else, he wanted to understand what she wanted, even if it cost him everything. After the encounters intensified and the crew began to fracture, Lacey made a desperate call to a psychic medium named Miranda Vale, a well-known figure in the Los Angeles paranormal community. Miranda had been featured in several TV shows and podcasts, often sought out by families and investigators dealing with real hauntings. She had a reputation for being brutally honest, emotionally drained after every case, and, more notably, selective. She didn't go anywhere unless she felt truly called. But the moment Lacey sent her a photo of the Mulholland house, Miranda responded with just 3 words, "I'm coming now." She arrived the next morning. Miranda was in her early 60s, with piercing gray eyes and a quiet intensity that made even Alex pause. She wore black from head to toe, her fingers adorned with rings made of obsidian and onyx. From the moment she stepped out of her car, she refused to go near the house without a protective charm around her neck. "This house doesn't whisper," she said softly. "It screams. You just stopped listening." The team gathered in the living room as she conducted a spiritual reading. She stood still in the center of the room, her hands outstretched, breathing slowly and deeply. The air around them seemed to change, grow thicker, denser. Then Miranda spoke in a low, strained voice. "This place is not haunted. It's claimed. There is something old here, older than the house, older than this city." She explained that the Mulholland house wasn't just cursed, it had been intentionally marked. Something had been invited in long ago, likely by Reginald Harrow, through rituals meant to bring power, youth, and success. But the cost had been hidden. Whatever Harrow summoned, it didn't leave when he died, it stayed. And it had grown. Miranda refused to speak its name aloud, referring to it only as the Bound One. She claimed it fed on creative energy, ambition, obsession, traits common among actors and artists. "That's why it's here," she said. "It doesn't want to kill you. It wants to keep you." Alex, ever the skeptic even in the face of mounting terror, scoffed. "And what exactly does it want from us now?" Miranda turned to him with an expression so hollow and intense that even Dean held his breath. "It wants to finish what was started." She revealed something even more chilling. The basement room, the one in the blueprints marked with strange symbols, wasn't a secret storage space, it was a ritual chamber. The symbols weren't just decorative, they were seals. Designed to keep something contained, but only if the door was never opened again. Jordan, pale and shaking, asked the question on everyone's mind. "So if we open it?" Miranda answered without hesitation. "You won't close it again. And you won't be the same." At this point, she demanded they stop filming and leave immediately. "The energy has already marked one of you," she warned. "You don't realize it yet, but it's too late for him." Everyone turned to look at Alex. He forced a laugh. "Let me guess, you want us to delete all our footage too?" But Miranda didn't smile. She walked up to him and placed a small pouch filled with herbs and black salt in his hand. "Sleep with this under your pillow. If you dream of the woman in white, do not follow her. No matter what she promises. If you do, you'll never wake up again." Later that night, Miranda packed up to leave. She refused to spend even a second in the house after sundown. As she stepped into her car, she gave one final warning to Lacey in a hushed, trembling voice. "If he opens that chamber, none of you will survive." The team was rattled. Dean began arguing with Alex again, insisting they call off the shoot. Jordan quietly packed a bag, refusing to return to the basement. Even Lacey, who had once championed the project, started to waver. But Alex, staring at the camera feed from the locked basement door, whispered under his breath, "This is it. This is the story that will make me immortal." None of them noticed the flicker of static on the screen, or the pale face that appeared just behind him, watching. The days that followed Miranda's visit were marked by an unsettling shift, not in the house, but in Alex himself. Something in him had changed. He spoke less, stared more, and when he did speak, his voice held a cold sharpness that made the others flinch. The Alex who once chased the truth with curiosity now moved with obsession. It was as if the house had taken root in his mind and was feeding. The footage became darker, not just in tone, but literally. Cameras that once captured crisp images now glitched randomly. Shadows bled into corners where there were no light sources. Sounds like whispers, scratching, and even guttural breathing began appearing in recordings, even when no one was in the frame. Alex watched these tapes over and over, sometimes for hours, ignoring meals and sleep. "It's trying to tell me something," he mumbled more than once. "It wants to be seen." Dean tried one last time to convince him to leave. He confronted Alex in the study, slamming down the blueprint of the basement. "Look at this, man. Look at what this place is doing to you. You haven't slept in days, you're mumbling to yourself, and you haven't even called your mom back." "She called me, Alex." Alex didn't even look at the paper. Instead, he whispered, "There's a door beneath the seal. It's real. I heard it call my name." Dean stepped back. "What did you say?" But Alex just smiled. "She wants to show me something." Lacey had already stopped staying at the house. She refused to enter the building after dusk and insisted the team take shifts sleeping at her hotel. Jordan, meanwhile, became paranoid. He claimed the footage was cursed. He tried deleting files from his drive, but they kept reappearing, even after full wipes. "I deleted it at midnight," he whispered to Dean one morning. By 3 a.m., the folder was back, with new clips I didn't record. The worst of it came on the fourth night. Dean stayed behind to monitor the surveillance feeds while the others slept. Around 2:47 a.m., he watched the basement door slowly creak open, even though it had been bolted shut for weeks. No one was near it. No one touched it. But the door opened all the same. Dean grabbed his flashlight and went down, trembling the whole way. What he found chilled him to the core. The room beyond the basement had been unsealed. The heavy chain they had placed on it was lying on the ground, melted, not broken. Carved into the wooden door was a symbol none of them had seen before, a jagged circle intersected with harsh lines and a crude eye in the center. When he returned upstairs, every single clock in the house read 3:33 a.m. Dean ran. He didn't come back. The next morning, Alex barely reacted. When Lacey confronted him about the door, he acted as if he didn't remember. "I was editing all night," he lied. "You sure Dean didn't just fake it?" He was always scared. That was the moment Lacey realized Alex was slipping. He wasn't just obsessed, he was being controlled. Jordan finally cracked. He packed all his things and left a handwritten note under Alex's coffee cup. "Whatever is in that house is not a story, it's a trap. You're not documenting anything. You're helping it spread." Now alone, Alex plunged headfirst into what he called the final act. He stayed up for nearly 48 hours straight, drawing symbols on the basement floor, mimicking the ritual described in Harrow's journal. He spoke Latin phrases aloud to the camera, lit candles in a perfect circle, and whispered into the darkness, "I'm ready. Show me the truth. Let me see you." That night, the entire house shifted. Foundation cracks deepened. The walls bled a thick, black ichor that dripped slowly like oil. Lights exploded one by one. And then, the mirror in the upstairs hall shattered without being touched. In the final footage recorded on Alex's handheld camera, he speaks directly to the lens. "They were wrong. All of them. This isn't evil. This is beauty. She is ancient. And she chose me." He turns toward the basement door, candle in hand, and disappears down the steps. The camera cuts out. The screen goes black. And the only thing left is the sound of breathing. Heavy, wet, and not entirely human. The blood moon rose over Hollywood like a warning. Crimson and bloated, it loomed over the hills as if casting a spotlight on the Mulholland house, on what was about to unfold. No one in the neighborhood knew it yet, but something ancient was stirring inside that mansion. Something that had waited nearly a century. Alex hadn't left the house in 2 days. His phone was dead. His messages unread. The footage from the surveillance cameras ended abruptly at 11:44 p.m. the night before the blood moon. From that point onward, there was no record of what happened, no digital trace. Just static, silence, and darkness. Lacey was the last to return. Against her better judgment, she came back, drawn not by curiosity, but guilt. She couldn't stop thinking about Alex, about how his eyes had started to look like they didn't belong to him anymore. She parked across the street, watching the house from her car for nearly an hour. No lights. No movement. But then, from the second-floor window, she saw it, a flickering candlelight and someone moving, slowly, deliberately, with something in their hands. She entered through the side door, filming with her phone. The air was cold, much colder than it should have been. As she stepped into the foyer, she saw it, symbols drawn in ash and blood across the floor, candles forming intricate patterns, and in the center of the living room, a mirror, untouched and polished, though the house around it was falling apart. The scent was thick, burned herbs, rotting wood, and something metallic. Then she heard chanting Alex's voice. But it wasn't just his. There were others, dozens of overlapping whispers, all echoing from below. The basement. Lacey descended, each step feeling heavier than the last, her breath quick and shallow. The wooden stairs groaned beneath her, and the deeper she went, the more distorted her surroundings became, like reality was bending, warping. Lights flickered and pulsed with every heartbeat. Then she saw him. Alex stood in the center of the sealed chamber, the hidden room Harrow had written about. Except now it was open, the door wide, its hinges broken and rusted. The room inside was a shrine, walls lined with mirrors, hundreds of them. Some cracked, others pristine. And in each reflection, Alex looked different. Younger. Smiling. Then older. Hollow-eyed. Then monstrous. He had painted symbols across his face in red. His shirt was torn, chest exposed, where a symbol had been carved into his skin, the same jagged circle from Harrow's journal. Around him were 6 candles and, in the center, a pile of objects, an old earring, a silver cigarette case, a child's toy car. All relics from previous victims. Lacey screamed his name. Alex turned, slowly, smiling wide. "She's coming," he whispered. "She heard me. She saw the film." "What did you do?" Lacey cried, stepping back. "I finished it," he said. "The ritual. I gave her what she wanted. The final offering. My story. My soul." And then it happened. The room went black. Not darkness like night, but a void. A collapse of light. Lacey's phone shut off, her flashlight dimmed, and in that moment, she wasn't in the basement anymore. She was somewhere else, a place made of shadows, echoes, and glass. Around her, the mirrors began to move. Figures stepped out of them, women in vintage dresses, actors in suits from the 1940s, a child holding a broken teddy bear. All of them pale, all of them with hollow, black eyes. Then came the woman in white. Tall. Elegant. Ageless. Her face was beautiful and terrible all at once, shifting, flickering, never still. Her eyes locked onto Lacey's. She raised one hand. "One more," she whispered. "To complete the reel." Lacey screamed. The mirror shattered. And just like that, the world returned. She was back in the basement. Alone. The chamber door was shut again, sealed with fresh chains that hadn't been there minutes before. No sign of Alex. No candlelight. No chanting. Nothing but silence. She ran. Out of the house. Into the street. Into the rising dawn. She never spoke of that night again. But the footage from her phone survived, scrambled, glitchy, but real. Enough to leak. Enough to stir rumors. Enough for conspiracy theorists to claim the ritual had worked again. That Alex had become the latest soul trapped in the house, one more reflection in a mirror that should never be looked into. The blood moon faded. But something had been fed. And it was still hungry. The sun returned to Hollywood the next day, golden and indifferent, casting its usual glow over palm trees and celebrity estates. Tourists bustled along the Walk of Fame. Studios resumed production. Life moved on, at least for everyone else. But something had shifted. Beneath the surface, in the shadows, something had changed forever. Mulholland House was declared condemned within a week. No official statement was given, but a city inspector was seen fleeing the property in a panic, mumbling about voices in the walls and blood dripping from the ceiling vents. He never returned to work. The property was fenced off, then quickly bought anonymously. The buyer was never revealed, but the house wasn't demolished. Instead, it was preserved, as if someone wanted to keep it intact, for a reason. Lacey left Los Angeles the day after she escaped the basement. She boarded a one-way flight to Maine and never looked back. The footage from her phone was uploaded anonymously to several online forums, where it was quickly dismissed by most as a horror short film or ARG. But a few recognized the house, some even claimed to have visited it. A few more noticed something strange in the footage, the reflections. In frame-by-frame analysis, new figures appear in the mirrors. Not just Alex or the ghosts, but viewers. People who watched the footage reported seeing themselves in the reflections, even when it should have been impossible. One man posted a screenshot of a mirror where his own bedroom was visible, despite watching the clip on his phone in the dark. He deleted his post hours later, claiming someone was standing behind him in the reflection that wasn't there in real life. He hasn't posted since. A Hollywood podcast attempted a full investigation into the haunted film house, but its final episode abruptly ended with a scream. The podcast hosts vanished. Their studio was found abandoned, with hundreds of mirrors placed around the room, all pointed inward toward an empty chair. As for Alex, he was never found. His name faded from headlines. The film he'd been working on, Blood on Mulholland, was never released. The footage was believed to have been lost. But a few months later, a reel of 16mm film surfaced on the dark web, labeled only Final Cut. It showed scenes no one remembered filming. Scenes that featured people who were no longer alive. Scenes where the camera seemed to move on its own, circling characters who looked terrified, trapped. Film archivists claimed the reel was cursed. One reportedly went blind after watching it. Another suffered a seizure and, in a final interview before his disappearance, claimed the film was a gateway. Not just a recording, but a key. A key to the thing behind the mirror. Urban legends exploded. Ghost tour companies tried to cash in by creating Hollywood's most haunted attractions, but their actors refused to enter the real Mulholland house. One died during rehearsal, electrocuted by faulty lights. Another had a nervous breakdown after claiming the actress in the mirror wouldn't stop smiling at her, even after the lights were off. To this day, the house stands untouched. Boards cover the windows. Cameras don't work inside. Motion sensors malfunction. But every few weeks, someone claims to see a light flickering from the upstairs bedroom window. Or hears faint music playing. Or worse, hears their own voice calling out from inside. Lacey now lives off the grid. She's never agreed to an interview, never spoken publicly again. But in a recent Reddit thread under an alias, she left a single comment: if you ever find yourself standing in front of a mirror and you notice something move that shouldn't, don't blink. Don't speak. Don't acknowledge it. Just walk away. Because if you see her, she's already seen you. The comment was upvoted thousands of times. Then it was deleted. Then the user vanished. And so the story of Hollywood's most haunted house continues, not just in whispers, but in reflections, in screens, in stories like this one. The film was never finished. Because it never needed to be. It finishes you. 95.